Hello, my name is Florencia Rojas Miguez, and I am an MPH candidate at New York Medical College School of Health Sciences and Practice. The following is a review of various contaminants that can leach from food packaging into food and their potential effects on child health. Plastics have become a significant part of our daily lives. We use them in almost everything, and they serve many useful purposes. One of their most important uses is in food packaging, which helps maintain the quality and safety of food. Even though they are so useful, plastics can pose a health risk, especially to children. There are several chemicals in plastics that can leach out into our food. Recently, a handful of chemicals have become of significant concern. One is called bisphenol A, and the other is a group of chemicals known as phthalates. I will talk about each of these chemicals with a brief description of what they are, factors that can increase our exposure, and what effects they can have on child health. At the end, I will discuss how parents can lessen their children's exposure to BPA and phthalates. The first chemical that will be discussed is bisphenol A, also known as BPA. BPA was first made in 1891 and has been used in the plastic industry since the 1960s. BPA is a monomer used to create polycarbonate plastic and epoxy resins. A monomer is a molecule that is used as a building block to create a polymer. Polymers are made up of many molecules, all strung together to form really long chains, which are then bound together to form one large complicated structure. This large complicated structure makes polycarbonate plastic, which is used to make baby feeding bottles, plastic storage and heating containers for food and beverages, and epoxy resins, which is used to line metal cans. Materials made out of BPA can actually release BPA into the foods and liquids with which they come into contact. As was stated previously, BPA molecules are actually bound together into a large structure to make these plastics. However, there are some molecules that do not bind to the others and are instead loose within the plastic. Whenever this plastic comes into contact with foods or liquids, the BPA molecules can actually migrate into our foods. Not only does BPA regularly leach into our foods and beverages, but there are also various factors that can increase the release of BPA. Any form of heating will increase the amount of BPA found in foods. This happens in two ways. First, if the plastics are washed in hot water, either in the sink or in the dishwasher, this damages the plastic and increases the amount of BPA that can transfer into foods and beverage stored in these plastics. The other is when hot food or beverages are stored in these containers, or when foods are heated in the microwave. The heat will cause more BPA to be released from the plastic. Another factor that will increase the amount of BPA released is through the storage of acidic or basic foods in these plastics. Examples of acidic foods include tomatoes, tomato-based soups, citrus products, milk, black coffee, carbonated beverages, and vinegar. Examples of basic foods are egg whites and baking soda. Storing fatty foods in your plastics will also increase the amount of BPA released into foods. BPA has lipophilic properties, which means that it acts like a fat. Fatty materials such as BPA dissolve easily in other fatty materials such as dairy products. Since children tend to consume more fatty foods, such as liquid infant formula stored in cans, they have a tendency to be exposed to more BPA. Many animal studies have focused on the health effects of BPA. In these studies, BPA was found to have weak estrogenic properties, which means that it behaves like the natural hormone estrogen and has similar effects on the body as estrogen. Scientists found that BPA can affect the reproductive system, can affect animal growth and development, and has an overall toxic effect on the body. Since infants and children are still growing, this makes them much more vulnerable to the effects of these types of chemicals. In September 2008, the National Toxicology Program, part of the National Institutes of Health, completed a review of BPA. In its report, they expressed some concern for the effects on brain, behavior, and prostate gland in fetuses, infants, and children at current human exposures to bisphenol A. The program also expressed minimal concern for effects in the mammary gland and an earlier age for puberty for females in fetuses, infants, and children at current human exposures to bisphenol A, and negligible concern for other outcomes. The other chemicals that have become of concern to health, especially child's health, are a group of chemicals called phthalates. There are many types of phthalates, including DHP, DINP, BBP, and many others. However, DHP is of greatest concern to health. Phthalates were first used in commerce about 75 years ago, and today are used in about 70% of the U.S. plasticizer industry. They are a class of chemicals used as plasticizers in plastic. These plasticizers help make plastics and polyvinyl chloride, also known as PVC, flexible, pliable, and elastic. PVC is a type of plastic produced by the polymerization of the monomer vinyl chloride. This is similar to how plastics made out of BPA are created. Vinyl chloride is a monomer that, when bound together with other molecules of vinyl chloride, form the polymer polyvinyl chloride, and this polymer is what makes the plastic. In order to make the plastic flexible, a class of chemicals known as phthalates are used. These chemicals are not bound to the PVC, but are instead found throughout the material. Plastics such as PVC that contain phthalates can be used to make bottles and packaging films. Materials made out of plastics using phthalates can actually leach these phthalates into the foods and liquids with which they come into contact. Not only do phthalates regularly leach into our foods and beverages, but there are also various factors that can increase the release of phthalates. Any form of heating will increase the amount of phthalates in food. Washing plastics in hot water, either by hand in the sink or in the dishwasher, will damage the plastic. When the food is then stored in this plastic, more phthalates will be released into the food. Storing hot foods or liquids or heating food stored in plastics in the microwave will also increase the amount of phthalates in food. Migration also increases when the plastic touches acidic, basic, or fatty substances. As a result, children are much more likely to be exposed to phthalates because they tend to eat fattier foods such as dairy products. As with BPA, phthalates also have an estrogenic as well as an anti-androgenic effect on the body. This means they interfere with testosterone and other hormones responsible for male and female sex characteristics. In animal studies, researchers have found phthalates can cause fetal death, malformations, and reproductive toxicity. Since infants and children are still growing, this makes them much more vulnerable to the effects of these types of chemicals. Even though there are many types of phthalates, there is one in particular, the phthalate di-2-ethylhexylphthalate, or DHP, that has been found to be of considerable concern, especially to children and infants. The National Toxicology Program of the National Institutes of Health has expressed serious concern for the phthalate DHP as a potential reproductive toxin in the male reproductive tract for seriously ill infants. DHP has also been listed as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen by the same program. What can parents do to minimize their child's exposure to BPA and phthalates? First, be careful with temperature. BPA and phthalates can move into hot liquids or foods when they touch packaging. Instead, if you want to warm and stir food, use ceramic or glass containers. You can also warm food on the stovetop in a pan. Another is to follow recommended guidelines to feed your infant. The American Academy of Pediatrics encourages breastfeeding for at least 12 months whenever possible, since breast milk is the optimal source of nutrition for infants. If breastfeeding is not an option, iron-fortified infant formula is the safest and most nutritious alternative. Liquid infant formula sold in cans do contain small amounts of BPA, while powdered infant formula has no detectable level of BPA. Parents should discuss any significant change to the baby's diet with a child's healthcare provider. Parents also need to buy BPA-free plastics. Make sure plastics used in baby bottles and sippy cups are BPA-free. Look for the BPA-free label on these products when purchasing from the store. Another is to throw away worn baby bottles and infant sippy cups. Scratches in worn baby bottles and sippy cups may increase the release of BPA or phthalates into liquids. Parents should also try to avoid canned foods. Try to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables. BPA can be found in the lining of most food and beverage cans. Also, you need to remember the handy reminder. With your food, use 4, 5, 1, and 2. All the rest aren't good for you. Plastic products are typically labeled with a number surrounded by the recycling symbol. These numbers and labels identify both the type of resin used to make the plastic and the product's recyclability. In general, plastics that are marked with recycle codes 1, 2, 4, or 5 have fewer or no known health issues. Plastics that are numbered 3, 6, or 7 do have known health risks. Phthalates are added to the plastic that are labeled 3. Plastics labeled 6 are made of polystyrene. These plastics can leach styrene, which have known health effects. Studies on animals have shown harmful effects of styrene on red blood cells, the liver, kidney, and stomach organs. BPA is used to make some plastics that are labeled number 7. For more information, please take a look at the references listed on the next slide, and thank you for listening.